is it looking rough out in Sacramento? Now, for those who are unaware, because I didn't report on it on this channel, one of the biggest subplots that happened during the offseason consisted of De'Aaron Fox, the Sacramento Kings, in a contract extension that was not signed. Now, many people just assumed the reason why De'Aaron Fox didn't sign long-term with the Sacramento Kings is simply because he wanted to maximize his opportunity to make the most amount of money possible by qualifying to be a Supermax contract player by potentially making an All-NBA team this year. But unfortunately, this gamble was very risky, not just for De'Aaron Fox, but also for the Sacramento Kings, because with Fox not signing a contract extension, it did also open up the opportunity for him to force a trade out of Sacramento, and it seems like that's the direction that we're going into. As the now 27-year-old guard went on the Draymond Green podcast, gave us a little bit more insight on his decision-making, and it certainly seems as if like there's going to be a lot of pressure on Sacramento to get something done sooner than later.
What was the motivation for you to pass on the extension, essentially continuing to bet on yourself, but, to pass on that amount of money and just play the season out?
For me, man, it has all to do with just the team, the organization. Where are we going? I want to make sure that we're in a position to try to win in the future. Like, I feel like I'm continuing to get better as a player every year. But for me, are we looking like we're continuing to get better year after year? And are we going to be able to compete at a high level? And that's all mine is. Like, if we can show that this year, like, you sign an extension now. If not, like, obviously I still have another year, but that's where my mindset is.
Now, all of that is real juicy, ain't it? And it seems as if, like, we found the next disgruntled star that might find himself joining another star to form a super team. I'm joking, obviously, or am I? I'm not really joking, but I will say this. This is all very interesting because I personally believe that De'Aaron Fox is the star that many teams are asset collecting for. A lot of conversations right now are circling around CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Jimmy Butler, Zach LaVine, and even though all of those players are really, really good, truth of the matter is because of the amount of money that they're getting paid or how old they are, they're just not as valuable as someone like De'Aaron Fox, and the fact that people are not discussing this is all very weird to me. Especially because as of late, the Sacramento Kings are spiraling out of control. Over the last 15 games, the Kings have a record of 5-10, which has made major contributions to their overall season record of 13-17, which is extremely damning for a team that's in the Western Conference. It is so competitive that the only way that you can really solidify yourself as a playoff contending team is if you could probably win around 48 to 49 games. So putting yourself in a deficit this early on in the season is going to be really, really hard to come back from. Now, a lot of people who may be optimistic will come to the conclusion, well, 13-17 isn't that bad. It's still early in the season. They can bounce back. However, their record really isn't indicative to how bad they truly are. Similar things can be said about a lot of the metrics that also back up where Sacramento is at right now, in particular their offensive rating, which is top 10 in the NBA. But the truth is really in the details and who exactly have they beaten early on this season. And I hate to do this, but I do believe that their record and their metrics are very disingenuous towards who they actually have been this season. Because when you take the time out to see who are the teams they've beaten and who they've lost to, you start to understand why that this team is really and truly really, really bad. So out of the 13 games, the teams that they have beaten are the Portland Trailblazers, Utah Jazz, Atlanta Hawks, Miami Heat, Toronto Raptors, the Phoenix Suns twice, both of which without Kevin Durant, in another game without Bradley Beal as well, the Utah Jazz once more, Minnesota and Houston, two really good wins. But then right after that, the San Antonio Spurs without Victor Wembanyama, the Utah Jazz once more, and then the New Orleans Pelicans, who are at the bottom of the conference. And so if you've been keeping count, the Kings basically only have 3 credible wins so far this season. Now, I know some people don't like it when I do that. At the end of the day, you have to face the teams that are ahead of you, and I thoroughly understand that. But I want to just make it clear, the numbers, the metrics don't really do it justice on how bad this team is, because a lot of their wins and a lot of the numbers behind them have been inflated due to them beating on teams that are really, really bad. Heck, the game against the San Antonio Spurs without Wemby, they had an offensive rating of like nearly 140. Similar things can be said about the game against the Utah Jazz a couple of nights ago as well. Now, what exactly is going wrong in Sacramento? Well, basically, the pieces ain't really piecing, if you understand what I'm saying here. Since the midway point in November up until now, the supporting cast members surrounding De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis have been terrible. Kevin Huerter, who was once a marksman, is already having a really slow start to this season, which is more or less carrying over from the end part of last year. If you look from November 15th to where we are today, Huerter is only averaging around 9 points per game while shooting 40% from the field and 29% from behind the arc. But possibly an even bigger disappointment is the 24-year-old forward in Keegan Murray, who early on in his career showed a lot of upside and potential with what he was able to provide with his three-point shooting and versatility on the offensive side, and also showed a lot of promise on the defensive side as well about 2 years ago. However, it has not been consistent over the past 2 seasons, and the inconsistency has really ramping up this season as well, as he's also had a really bad start. And once more, from November 15th to where we are today, Murray's only averaging 11 points, 7 rebounds, and shooting splits of 40% from the field and 30% from behind the arc. But what I believe is probably going to be the nail in the coffin, and that is the DeMar DeRozan addition. DeRozan was set to be the difference maker for a Kings team that was trying to find a bit more dynamic play in their offense by moving off of Harrison Barnes and bringing him in at a very, very low price point. Now, personally, I wasn't the biggest fan of this addition, and DeMar DeRozan has voiced his frustrations with my opinion on him being on his team, and it's not really because of who DeMar DeRozan is. I mean, to be fair, he's getting up there in age, and of course he's going to start declining, but rather the fit of who DeRozan is on this roster. As a Laker fan, I saw my team be a victim over and over and over again to this team that was up and coming, flourishing, really hyper-focused on what they could produce on the offensive side of the floor, and one thing that they were really able to hang their hat on about the last 2 years was their movement, three-point shooting, and just an offense that was so robust and very difficult to defend that it really and truly did thrust them into conversations that a lot of people did not expect them to. So when you add DeRozan on his roster, who isn't that athletic, who isn't known for his on and off ball movement, and quite frankly is a ball stopper, I just thought it would be best to put him on the bench, but they decided to start him. And as of late, they have certainly felt the impact of having DeRozan on their team. And I do believe with the addition of DeRozan, as well as poor three-point shooting from Murray and Huerter, it has really hurt what this team looks offensively. And of course, DeRozan struggling as well doesn't help them either. Once more, since November 15th to where we are today, DeRozan is averaging around 19 points per game. He is getting you around 3 to 4 assists and rebounds, but the shooting splits are just terrible. 43% from the field, 22% from behind the arc. And though he is getting to the free throw line at a respectable rate and knocking them down, it's just not enough. And of course, the numbers just don't do it justice on how bad it looks offensively. There is a lot, and I do mean a lot of sacrificing and adjusting that we're seeing from both Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox for this to work out, as both of them who attack the basket, get at the rim at levels in which can really transform an offense. They just need to be surrounded with three-point shooting. However, they've adjusted a lot this year. They're not getting to the basket as often as they do. They're shooting more mid-range shots and three-pointers, both of them. And to give respects to both of them, they're knocking down these middies and threes at a way higher clip than I think many people originally anticipated, including myself. In particular with Sabonis, he's attempting the most threes that he has taken as a King and knocking them down at a 40% clip. And all of his twos outside of the restricted area, he's converting them at a 50% rate, if not higher. And then when it comes to Fox, once more, since the 15th of November to where we are today, he's been amazing. Averaging 27 points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds, averaging a steal and a half, shooting 48% from the field, 36% from behind the arc, and 78% from the free throw line. And very similar to Sabonis, his game has done a lot of adjusting to a team that just isn't giving adequate floor spacing, as the three-point shooting has ramped up in volume to 6 a game. Personally, I believe that this overall hurts his impact, including Sabonis. I believe that them taking long twos and three-point shooting doesn't really force teams to shift as much as they need to, which makes it even easier to defend them in a lot of these close games. But moreover, I really don't blame them because they're just doing the best that they can with what they have, and that feels like a reoccurring theme with the Sacramento Kings. For those who are unaware, Sacramento is just one of the worst ran franchises in the NBA, and when drafting De'Aaron Fox back in 2017, they gave him the task of being the player who's going to spearhead them to their first postseason appearance since 2006. Yes, which is a crazy responsibility, but he was tasked with that. And to be fair to De'Aaron Fox, he accomplished that just 2 years ago as the Kings made the postseason appearance, and all credit to Sabonis as well. But moreover, like I said in real time when they made the trade to get Sabonis, this was a team that had a very clear ceiling. They hit it, and I just don't see them getting any higher. And a lot of that goes back to the decision making that makes Sacramento one of the worst ran franchises in the NBA. Go back and look at the players that they drafted, the biggest blunder being Marvin Bagley selected selected over Luka Doncic. The transactions that seem very aimless, the idea of De'Aaron Fox even being on a team is because they fumbled on a transaction that ended up them receiving a lower draft pick than they really should have. And in all honesty, they are the ones that should have been in position to draft Jason Tatum, not the Boston Celtics. Just in case you didn't know, yeah, Boston received the pick to get Jason Tatum from the Philadelphia 76ers because the Kings traded that pick or a pick swap to the Philadelphia 76ers. So yes, Sacramento was supposed to have the pick that belonged to the Boston Celtics where they drafted Jason Tatum. That's how bad this team has been over the course of the last, really at this point, 20 years. But the most frustrated thing when it comes to the Kings, it seems as if like this team just doesn't have any ability to make moves that are way more future-proof. It's always in the moment, in the present, and if they make a mistake, it's too damning of one to really reel back in and try to make adjustments. And for me, that was always my biggest criticism when they traded Tyrese Halliburton to go get DeMontis Sabonis. Yes, I understand Sabonis is a better player. I am willing to admit that. Yes, I understand that Sabonis even fits better alongside De'Aaron Fox. But from several reports, teams didn't even know that Halliburton was available. They moved sporadically. And again, Sabonis is a really good pickup, and it played a huge part in them making their first postseason appearance in nearly 2 decades. But the truth of the matter is, it still was very underwhelming. And now you have your franchise player who is in the middle of his prime, putting up numbers that basically puts him in conversations to be a top 10 point guard in the NBA, and you cannot solidify a roster around him that can result in at bare minimum a playoff appearance. That's crazy, which then kind of leads us down the path of the inevitable, and that is De'Aaron Fox leaving the franchise. Sacramento really doesn't have any more moves to be made. The DeMar DeRozan addition was the final piece. Yes, there are some rumors about how Malik Monk could potentially be traded to another team, but in all honesty, moving off of Malik Monk would be moving off of your third best player, in my opinion, on this roster, which I don't necessarily believe they're going to receive anything better in return. So I don't really think that's going to make any improvements to their team. Once more, this team is set to where they are right now, and looking at their roster and looking at their schedule, I don't really see how this team makes a significant turnaround anytime soon. And even if they do, once more, it's going to max out as a first round exit, which is why I believe that the interview that De'Aaron Fox did with Draymond Green, very interesting, especially the timing, because basically it has now opened up the conversation for the Kings to move off of De'Aaron Fox sooner than later, since he only has one more guaranteed year on his contract after this season. And with Fox being 27 years old, making less than $40 million a year, the amount of suitors that are out there for a player of his caliber is going to be way more than a Jimmy Butler, a Zach LaVine, or even a Brandon Ingram, because he is just, in my opinion, in a tier ahead of those players, especially if he's put in the right position. And I do believe that's the reason why a lot of teams in the NBA are holding off on their assets, especially the teams that have the ability to be a bit more patient, because they truly believe that Jimmy Butler isn't the answer, Zach LaVine isn't the answer, Brandon Ingram isn't the answer. No, it may be De'Aaron Fox. And a couple of teams that people have already been rumored to talk about that, in my opinion, also makes a lot of sense. The first one are the Houston Rockets. Houston is struggling offensively. They need a passer and playmaker. They need someone who can shift the defense to create and generate more open looks for everyone else. And I do believe with Fox's development and his ability to fit alongside DeMontis Sabonis, his fit alongside Alfred Sengun should be even more seamless, because I do believe Sengun as an offensive weapon has a slightly higher ceiling in terms of a scorer and a passer. But outside of that, you also have the San Antonio Spurs, another team out in Texas, who, let's just call a spade a spade. I mean, if you're running Chris Paul as a starting guard in the NBA right now, I get it. He's a veteran. He's going to sit there and make the right play, but you need a little bit more dynamic play in that backcourt. And San Antonio is in a very similar place, has a lot of draft capital that they've accumulated over the past couple of years by trading some players. They also have some young talent as well that shows a lot of potential and promise, but with Wemby already being at the point where he's at right now in his career, they're definitely in a much more win-now situation sooner than I think a lot of people want to admit. So by expediting that process, by putting a win-now guard next to Wemby and De'Aaron Fox, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I truly don't believe so. But regardless of where De'Aaron Fox goes, I do believe it is a ticking time bomb out in Sacramento. It's only a matter of time before we have to just accept the reality, and that is the Sacramento Kings are not going to be able to build a contending team around Fox and Sabonis, especially with the supporting cast they have right now. Everyone can be a little bit delusional. Everyone can kind of put themselves in this mind state that it's going to work out. But the truth of the matter is, this offseason was very important for Sacramento, as Fox didn't sign the extension. Their response was to go out there and get DeMar DeRozan. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, it's done. There's no way. Because a DeMar DeRozan edition in big 2024 ain't gonna do nothing for you. It's just not. It's just not. Bill, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think about the Sacramento Kings, and where do you think De'Aaron Fox should go? Because the reports are coming out. And until next time, I'll see you all later. Peace.